all been there. You've got your pressure washer. You've got some pressure washing to do, and it won't start. Now this pressure washer, I had put some Troybilt in the gas, and I was hoping that would take care of it. But with this modern gas that we have, it doesn't. Typically, what we'll do is open up this little cover, remove the air filter, give it a little shot of starting fluid, and but that's only temporary. I already know there's problems with the carburetor, and hopefully I can show you some steps how to fix that. I want to try to go through this step by step as best I can. We're going to have to take the carburetor off. To get the carburetor off, I need to take off this top panel, the air box, and whatever else may be in the way. So to start with, this top panel here, which has the kill switch built into it, is a Phillips screw. I'm going to remove that. It actually kind of hangs on to the cover. There's another one over here. Hopefully I can see. I have that in the, yeah, there it is. That's an 8mm, and I'm just going to use this cordless to remove that. Actually, that's not attached. So we'll set that aside. The kill switch is actually attached to the air box. So inside of that, there's another couple of 8mm. So I'll remove those. That'll get the air box off. And I will point out there's a little vent connector right here that goes into this hole when you put it back on. So I'm going to set that aside. And now we'll look at the carburetor. Now there's a variety of rods and different things that attach to this. And you can see there's a return spring here. All of this is, you know, old mowers and stuff like that, you'd have a throttle that you could control. This is all automated. So when I take this apart, I got to make sure where these things are and how they interact. So if you need to, take some pictures of it or make a video, and that'll help a lot. I do see that there's a red wire over here that is attached to or underneath the bolt that holds the carburetor on. So you want to make sure that goes back on. At this point, I have a couple things. I've got a fuel line here that I'm going to have to disconnect, and that's going to take a little clamp or a little pair of pliers to squeeze that clamp and remove it. And of course you want to try to capture any fuel or anything like that that's going to come out of it. So let's see. That rod goes up there. That rod goes to the back. So again, it's kind of like a little puzzle. Let me get my pliers, and I'm going to need a wrench. Those bolts are a 10mm. Yep, and I can't directly get on that one because there's parts of the carburetor in the way. So I'll have to get a wrench for that. Like I said, take some pictures. Okay, so I have a little cup, and the plan is to squeeze this clamp and slide it back. We'll see if I can't get that loose. Might have to use the channel locks to break it loose. it goes. I don't know if you can see or not, but I actually did put fresh gas in this, hoping that that would take care of it. Alright, so now I want to get the carburetor itself off. So I'm going to start with my 10mm wrench, and I'm going to take loose this bolt in the back. I did notice as I was turning the bolt loose, there is a hole in the center of the bolt that takes a number 30 star socket. So that'll help. If I get it in there, much better. So I'm going to let that bolt in there, see if I can't get this one to come loose with the star. Set that bolt aside, and then just be careful when you take this off that nothing kind of falls away that you don't identify. I do recognize this plate has this little spring. I'm sorry if I can't get a video shot of that, but has that little spring, and this is why you take pictures. So I'm going to set that up on top, knowing that spring goes in that little hole there. Now, the only hard part about this is being able to manipulate the rods or the carburetor to get those rods off. You can see that I turned that one in the back here, at least I hope you can see that. Turned that one, slides off, and then this one, a little more complicated of an angle, and that slides off. Now I have the carburetor in my hand, and I'm going to start taking this apart and show you what we need to do. As you can see, I'm doing this outside because the sunlight is better, and I just want to be able to show you these things. Now, this 13mm fits a little bit loose on this bolt, but it will take it loose. So I'm going to take that off. And that's going to allow for the separation of the bowl. Now you can see it's losing gas out of the bowl. It actually doesn't look that bad inside. I expect to see a lot more trash, but set that aside. Now you could have also removed the bowl while it was still attached to the engine and tried to capture some of that gas. At this point, what I want to do is remove what's called the float. You can see that it moves up and down. And it's called a float because that's what it does. It floats in the gas. When that bowl is full, this goes up, pushes a little pin basically up in place, and a needle valve is what it's called, and it shuts off the fuel flow. When the fuel depletes, this drops down, it pulls down on the little pin, and then it allows fuel to go into the bowl. So what I want to do is pull this pin out, set that aside, and that releases the float and that pin. And that pin looks a bit crusty. You can also take that pin and slide it out of the float. It has a little keyed section there that it slides out of. Set the float aside. Now, you can kind of look at this float, or the pin, I should say needle valve, and there's a bunch of crust on that. You see that? Hopefully you can see that. A bunch of crust built up on it. And this needle valve feels like rubber. It is rubber. So I want to clean that up a little bit. I have some just simple carb cleaner, and I'm just going to spray that a little bit. That seemed to take care of most of it. Yeah, it looks better already. Still in good shape, just had a bunch of gunk on it. So I'm going to set that aside. Now I want to look into the carburetor, into the base here, because if it had it on the needle, then it had it on the seat, and that's what that is called. Inside there, it's called the seat. So I'm going to spray some cleaner into that. Now I'm just going to be gentle with this. Just kind of move it around inside a little bit. Try to get that stuff loose. That looks better. It's kind of hard to see with this camera, but it definitely looks better. Now the other part I want to clean up a little bit. I can see there's some, you can see there's some material on here. And I also want to try to clean inside of this, because that's where the fuel actually goes up and into the top part of the carburetor. So I'm going to clean that up a little bit. I'm not taking anything else apart, just trying to get these little areas opened up. It's already showing more promise. And then there's a little bit of junk. Whoops, I knocked off the gasket. That's okay. A little bit of junk accumulated right there on the this area. Like I said, I'm not going to mess with any of the adjustments. Just make sure everything moves. That seems to have freed up what needs to be freed up. It doesn't hurt to spray into any kind of little passages that you have. Alright, so now we're just going to reverse the process. I'm going to slip that little needle valve back onto the float. Then I'll slip it into that hole and align, hopefully you can see that, align everything. And then I'll get that little pin and put it back in. And that pin just stays right there. There's nothing, there's no bending of anything. It just rides in there because it really can't go anywhere. When the bowl is in place, it actually rides really close to the edges of that, so it can't move. I want to clean out this bowl just a little bit. Make sure there's as much residual material removed as I can. And in fact, the little center bolt, you can see it's got this, hopefully you can see, it's got a hole cross drilled through it. And I'm not exactly sure what that does, but I'm going to clean that out. And it may not do anything, honestly. There you go. I can see a light through it. Sorry about my neighbor's dog barking. That's Chomper. He's a good guard dog. Okay, now I'm going to just set that bowl back up on and gently tighten this bolt. And now I'll reverse the process and reinstall everything. And you can see, if you're ever curious about how things fit together, here's a witness mark on this gasket, so I know it goes like that. And also you can see the witness mark where it mates to the engine. Okay, now I want to reassemble this. So I know, based really on the size of the pinholes within the these arms here, that one attached there, and this one attached there. Also, and this gets a little bit trickier trying to do all this and get everything in the right place, but this spring, as I showed earlier, this little spring attached up behind that big rod, and then you can kind of see how everything goes in place, at least to a point. So I'm going to let that one sit there. I'm going to slip this gasket up between, get all that sitting where it needs to be, and then get this first bolt in. There we go. And I'm just going to tighten it up just a little bit. And then the second bolt with the wire still attached. Get all that in place. Now I don't want to tighten it with the drill motor. I want to tighten it by hand, so I'll make sure these are pretty snug. I can't tell you what the torque is. I just know that I don't want them going anywhere. How about that? All right, now I'm going to reattach the fuel hose. Slip that on. Put the clamp back in place. That's going along pretty good. Now I want to get the air box back on. Of course, to make sure everything's where it was. Slip that little vent tube onto the back side. Make sure that's where it belongs. And really, I'm going to go ahead and put on all the pieces. Now ideally, I'm not starting this to leave it run. I want to start it just to see it run, because there's no pressure or no water connected to the pump. So So let's see what happens. I'm going to help it a little bit. I'm not sure if I actually have to have the water connected to help it run, but we'll find out. Okay, so it didn't start. I think this little hole in the center here, I found that I took a little piece of safety wire and put in there, and I could feel gunk. So I'm thinking this is probably an air vent. Again, I'm not 100% sure, but if it's not allowing air in into the bowl, which I think that's what these holes do. I think that little cross hole allows air somehow to seep in there so that it can function. So again, I'm going to just clean that up. I hope I can. Hope you're in front of. I'm in front of the camera. I can't see the sun so bright. But yeah, there's a bunch of gunk in there. Okay, let's try this again. Again, I do have the water hooked up. Well, as you can see, sometimes you have problems. Even though I took everything apart and cleaned it, I didn't clean out that little hole, and that was enough to make this not run. So I'm glad I was able to find that actually and show it to you, because it's easy to show you something with the magic of YouTube and say, hey, it's all good to go. But to show a failure and the correction, now you can see it and know why you need to do it this way. Again, this is a Troybilt 8.5 horsepower, 190 cc's overhead valve, simple gas engine. I think I got it from Lowe's a couple years ago. And you know, you're gonna, if you have ethanol gas, you're gonna have the same problems. But this is a fairly easy fix. Again, it took me a couple tries to get it right, but I'm happy with it. That's it for this episode of Joe Daddy's Workshop. Please throw a thumbs up on there, subscribe, like, share, all those cool things. And there's more to come. Take care of yourselves, and thanks for watching. So now I have a bigger task, and I need to pressure wash our camper. All right, so I'm going to reassemble this, and as I said before, you know, if you haven't, all right, so I'm going to reassemble this now, and like I said before, you know, if you haven't, now I want to reassemble. As you can see, there can be more problems, and I hope